All right, welcome to the Bird's Nest, episode 8. I have a special guest tonight, the RPG Grandma. Say hi, RPG Grandma.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
So, I'm doing an interview with the RPG Grandma, and I want you guys to get to know who she is. We're going to talk about gaming, her background with gaming, and that's it. That's what we're focusing on tonight, and we're going to have a good time. So, hey, RPG Grandma, let's just dive right in, right?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay. So I got sort of these questions set up in these sort of like sets of questions because I know if I ask you something, you're probably going to answer most of these before the end. So I'll just sort of ask, these in sets. So the first set is this: what year did you start playing tabletop role playing games?
I was a little kid. I didn't write
Oh,
it down.
well, fair enough. Yeah, you can answer any way you want. You don't. I'm not asking for details. What was the game? And what or who inspired you to try tabletop role playing games? And however that comes across to you, you go ahead and answer that whatever way you want. And if you need me to repeat any of those questions, just ask.
All right. So I was a little kid.
Okay.
I was the oldest of 4 cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And my one of the other cousins, he showed up at Grandma's house. Hi, God of Ka. And he had Dungeons and Dragons. None of us knew how to play it.
Mm-hmm.
So we sat there on the floor with little pamphlet books trying to figure out how to play a hand-me-down game of Dungeons and Dragons that I believe he got it from his father, who tried it.
Yep.
And at the time, his father was into wargaming, and his
Yep.
father didn't like it. So I'm not exactly sure what year that was,
mm-hmm.
but I know it was like a girl elf or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was elf. And I know we did Blackmore had to have come out because we did the Temple Frog. We just had to have, because when I get Temple of Frog out, I'm like, yeah.
That's a beautiful introduction.
What we're doing. And we died and got eaten and ate frogs and got eaten by frogs. And
that's awesome.
And we had great fun. And we had been playing our own little war games prior to that with our own little mini 1/72nd scale armies.
Well, talk a bit about that.
Well, it was real simple. We would go get armies and we would build them, those little, those little plastic.
I've done some of it.
Right.
That's awesome.
And
stuff,
we didn't have them mounted right. We didn't do any of that. We just put our little guys out there and we would play little tactical games, and we would use the pencil to figure out if things were in line of fire, and everybody would take a turn and move so many, the horses go a little further than the guys on foot. And we had like our own little weird rules. And
so you've always had a wild imagination.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we were hooked.
Yeah.
We were hooked from that moment on role play games. And so we would go to figure out where to get them. That was the next thing. Where do we get these things? And then we would bring them home, and we did that for years. And so we played all kinds of games, not just D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And we had fun, and we probably, according to the people who say they're experts, did everything wrong. But that doesn't matter.
It's the best way to learn.
And so that's when it really started. And I can say that we transitioned and we mixed the different editions of D&D freely and happily, because we were getting things like Dragon Magazine and Polyhedron and all that, where we got to see the development of the game. So at no point in those magazines was there ever a suggestion that because it wasn't in a rule book, you don't do it. So we had freedom. And that's
really where I stand on that. So that is something I think is something that you should tell every gamer is you're free to do whatever you want. Don't listen to what people say. Well, that's not D&D. It's whatever you want it to be.
Well,
right.
It's all D&D to me.
Exactly.
I'm quite serious about it. About that.
Me and you, you
It's
know
one
this,
big role
100%
playing
agree.
game. Doesn't matter to me if you're using cards to figure out your randomizing factor, if you're using D100s, if you're using all the dice, just D6, if you're using bingo balls, don't
Hmm.
care.
No, I 1,000,000% agree with you. So, all right, let's do some old school nerding out, right? Some things that might matter to you. So, like, of course, let's go old school nerd here. What is your? Do you have a favorite character? Is there a favorite campaign or a session that you played? And is there a special experience you've had during any session where you're like that sticks out to you? One or two, maybe more, whatever you come up with.
All right.
Okay.
Well, from the little kid game
Okay. Awesome.
back in the day, there was a point where we were eating a giant frog legs. We were cooking those up, and we got attacked by
Awesome.
something. And the only handy weapon we had was the frog leg that we were cooking over the fire, which we ended up using as a club. We ended up using these legs as clubs.
I could buy that. Yep.
Every character has the right to defend themselves with a blunt object. Anyway, so
1,000,000% agree. Even the leg of a chair will work
yeah,
if you want to rip it
yeah,
off.
you can all brawl. So
Yep.
anyway, so we were defending ourselves with these frog legs, and we I don't know why we made up a word that we started screaming in this game, Ligety, and so the leg that didn't get broke, that we kept the bone, and it became the bone of a Ligety, and it was like the party special weapon.
Oh my, that is so beautiful. That is so old school. That is
And
so old
this
school.
thing, in reality, did it have any special powers? No.
No.
Would it if I put it into a modern game? Yes, but because I'd have to make what a Ligety is.
You made it special.
But in that particular
Yeah.
game, a bunch of kids, we made it special, and
Yes.
that was like our surprise / war cry, a Ligety.
That such an awesome early experience. Yeah, I've had some of those.
That's always stuck. When it comes to a more kind of like in the middle of my role playing game life here, it was again a D&D character. It was a gnome that I played, and it was Neek the gnome who goes eek.
What an awesome thing! A lot of people
had
don't
no
like smaller
wisdom
characters
whatsoever. I mean, it was like so whatever came out of my mouth, that's what I was going to do. That was the rule on the table.
That's some good role play.
I was a spellcaster. So the party learned very quickly when I said I have a great idea to run for cover. Because whatever I was going to do, it was going to backfire terribly. It was going to be hilarious, even if I wasn't intending to be hilarious. Somehow it would end up being crazy, and I had so much fun with that gnome magic user. I think they were, back then, they were an illusionist, technically, but they were always breaking all the rules. Like that. That's like because my character had no wisdom. So
it was like freedom.
Yeah, right. So and that's also the same campaign where we ended up with the bard getting turned into a pink pony that talked, and so every princess on the planet wanted him to own him. So there was a bounty for him, which was great because the guy who was playing the bard was obnoxious and he hated it. So so we had the whole thing about trying to hide the pink pony, disguise him, keeping his mouth shut,
That's awesome.
Because he couldn't talk when NPCs were around. There was always a chance somebody would hear him, and then getting him back to normal. And there was like a lot of things went wrong in that game that I have horror stories about that game as well that involved him and his girlfriend.
I can believe that.
But at the same time, in the end, it was probably the most crazy, fun game on one end, and also the most dark and grim and disturbing on another, because we rotated who was dungeon mastering as well.
Oh no.
So each
Yeah.
dungeon master brought
Uh-oh.
different things to the game as the game progressed and changed the direction the game was going and stuff like that. And so it was fun, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things I try to champion. Being a player is great. Being a
Yeah.
GM's great.
Yeah.
Doing them both, that's the
No.
best of both worlds.
Well,
You should do it. You
depends.
should try both once, so
In
you
one run, yeah.
have perspective. At the
Oh,
very minimum.
I agree. A million percent agree with that. I think even the things that me and you can know from years of playing these games, that's no good. But if I meet some young people, if they're not meeting me on my YouTube video, I won't say to them, "Don't do that." I'll
Right.
say, "Go ahead, have
Yeah,
have
do
at it. Go fall on your face, and then I'll talk to you when you're done."
Right.
Right? You know what I mean? Or maybe if I do something I don't know, I'm always trying to keep open minded on that stuff. But yes. All right. Well, that's amazing. I didn't expect to get that much. I'm impressed.
Come on, Pink Pony. My little
I hear you.
picture.
That is a beautiful story. Oh, okay. This section, mastering the game. What is your background with game mastering? Do you have a preferred rule set to play or game master? I know where you stand on that to a degree, but I mean, do you have any type of preference, or at least as a game master, maybe what you prefer to run? And last question, is there a game mechanic that you like, even though you don't like the overall game?
Okay.
Okay.
That's a lot. All right.
I know, and I can
I do
repeat some of that
play
if
a
you want.
lot of what I would call D&D type games because they use the multitude of dice. Often they have very similar game mechanics. I've played several different editions of D&D, and I've played Arduin stuff, which that ties right back in. But believe it or not, I also really love D100.
Oh wow, yeah. Okay. I think I've heard a bit about you talking about that. Yeah.
And one of my favorite games is Star Frontiers, and it
Oh yes.
is a D100 based game. It's probably one of the easiest games to get up and running and get people wrapping their heads around because it is a D100 game. A game mechanics.
It's a lot of strategy if I've been told correctly. Is that correct?
Well, it's a role playing game. So
Okay.
So once you have your initial stats rolled up and your character figured out,
Yeah.
then everything is really easy to understand percentage changes. People can wrap their head around that very easily.
Yeah.
So it really is, and it's a fun bubblegum space opera kind of a setting. So that's something people generally can also latch onto pretty easily.
Just jump in and have some fun. Yeah.
Yeah, they just jump in and have fun.
It's cost. Coin toss.
Sadly, it's one of the many victims of neglect.
So you think they missed the boat on that type of gameplay? You think they could have done a lot more?
Yeah, there's still a Star Frontiers community because I know because I'm part of it. That is how I got back into the larger role playing game community was through getting Star Frontiers replaced. My husband got it for me for Christmas. I used to have it. A lot of stuff got destroyed that we had as games. And so he replaced that for Christmas, found an old copy. And as I'm playing with it and looking at it and having my nostalgia moment and being like, oh, you and I can play Star Frontiers. Then I was, I wonder if anybody else is still playing this game.
You would hope some OSR potential game designers hear
and that was before
stuff
the
like
term
this, right?
OSR existed. Did not exist yet. And I found people who were still playing it. And so I hooked up with them. I helped a lot of them with various projects. Some of those people were publishing stuff. Ultimately, a group of them talked me into writing articles for a fan magazine. I ended up helping develop
Sweet.
new game mechanics for Star Frontiers where we had things missing from the game that never got developed for it, that got published.
I'm
So,
not surprised. I know you have the mind for this.
and so, learned more about real life radiation than I ever want to know. That stuff's scary.
Yes.
Not the same as fantasy radiation, people. Not the same. So, so, so then, and that's really was the beginning of me doing stuff a little more public. In the past, I've helped lots of people, and I'm always surprised when they've given me credit for helping them with things.
It's not something you require.
No, I never require it. I'm the recycle queen when it comes to converting things. I would convert things a lot.
So you have a true passion for this that has nothing to do with rewards.
No. I just my hobby. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like sitting there and analyzing things. It's a way for me to relax. If I'm not doing RPGs, you have a very, very high chance of finding me reading a scientific study to relax.
Well, basically, you need to exercise that imagination and creativity side of yourself, right? And that's
So it's like at my current job, which I'm not going to say where I'm working or any of that, but
of course,
I have been asked quite bluntly by people, why am I there? And I've asked them what they mean, and they go, you're the only person who wanders around here and writes physics problems on a whiteboard. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm working on it.
Like I'm a little bit of a nerd or geek,
or studies or is researching the DNA of a brontosaurus or something, on my free time, and that's just how I relax, and it's how and to me the universe is so exciting, and there's so much stuff out there to learn, and I know I can't learn it all, but if I'm interested in something, why not learn something? And new.
It makes life exciting.
Yes,
it does.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm the nerd. I have them all trained now. That's why I can't go get another job because I'd have to train like another 200 people.
Yeah, you're like, no, I've done enough now.
Yeah, how to interact with me.
I've earned my spot. It's like I've earned that spot, so we're in.
Yeah, when they did the personality thing at work.
How did that come out?
Oh, how'd that come out?
Yeah.
They all my coworkers pointed and yelled what color I was. There's different colors, that color thing, but there's different gimmicks on it. Yeah. Anyway, the one that they were doing is for the super analytical mind that gets into a logic loop and all that kind of stuff. The computer has to finish one problem before it starts the next. So if I'm processing and you say good morning, expect my reply for good morning to be an hour later.
You're the mad genius.
Yeah. And but I only use my mind for good. So, but they were like, yeah,
great Marvel line.
Yeah, she's the super analytical one out of like everybody there, which is why I get to be the equipment tester this year.
Okay, before we move on from that last part, so I'll ask you this: what do you prefer, playing or game mastering?
Playing or game mastering?
Yeah, out of the two, which is your preference? If you on any night, if I said, look, if you know you have a good game to go to, like just on any night that you have a good game master and you have good players to play with, or you could go to a group of good players that you know on any night, and you had either one of those choices. Which one would you choose that night if you knew you had a guaranteed good group of players or a good group with a game master on the other side? So you're safe on either side. Which would you choose that night? Yeah.
Right now I'm a player on a lot of games. I do like to game master probably just a little bit more. And that is why I am the one-off game master in the play group. In other words, there's a regular game that is actually going on, but that can't happen all the time, and so
one shots.
I will bring in the weird one shot and
Awesome.
say like, I have a lethal game, and everybody goes, yay!
Here, I'll ask you live. I'll ask you live on the stream, right? I run one shots every so often, really random, so I can plan them out whenever. And I have pre-made characters for the game I run. And you know what game I run,
Right?
you know.
Yeah.
One of these days, would you jump into one shot and let me run it for you? With some of the players I have.
One of your one shots?
Yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
pre-generate, you don't have to make a character. No work on your end. Yeah,
that's what I do on the one shots myself. I literally like the last one I did. I was just like, I want to play a role playing game. So I just brought up the PDF and I sat there with 3x5 cards and dice, and I made everybody I made a whole bunch of little 3x5 cards of characters to choose from. And I said, got a lethal game to play, and everybody said, all right. And they all sat down, and I said, pick out your characters. They did, and we ran an adventure right there.
Okay.
You know.
Okay. Now I hear that.
Yeah.
So here we're going to move on to a different area, and so here's the first part of this thing. I'm going to ask you character development. When I say character development, what does that mean to you? And then after you tell me what it means to you, how do you go about developing your character, given your view of what developing a character is? Because I only ask it that way is because I've heard so many different opinions about what developing or what even that is. So I want to know where you stand, because we might see it a little differently, right?
Well, in the beginning, when you create your character, I find that you're going to end up going down one or two paths. You're either going to have a very clear idea, kind of like what you want your character to be at the beginning, or you're going to be like, I don't know what I want to do with this character. I know I want them to be, I don't know, a private eye, but after that, maybe the person doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
And let's pick like a game like that, and so the person really doesn't really have a clear idea. So development can start actually before you actually make the character, in theory, because the person has an idea what they want to do versus one who's like very vague. But the real development, in my opinion, starts happening as the character starts adventuring. Backstory, I'm not against backstories, as long as they're reasonable. I'm not against social and some cultural, all that kind of stuff. That's all useful for the character to be role played. But the actual development of the character is in the role playing. And the person who's running the character figuring out who they're going to be in that setting, versus the various challenges that come up and paradoxes and problems that they're faced with. Who are they actually going to choose to be, and versus what their original idea was, because those also diverge often in a game. So the development process is really, to me, very organic. But I know from just being around that people have very rigid ideas about
I might be one of them with some of those
to maximize their abilities. And I understand some
on character on that end. Yeah, that's different.
I understand that's some people's they're super jazzed about that. And so, that's fine with me too, but it's just what I tend to see, the real development happens because of the adventures they go on.
And here's like a minor area. Like I get what you're saying, and maybe it's just here's my difference. When I think of character development, it's an important area to me because I see a lot of players that have a hard time with it, right? I feel bad because they'll tell me that they're honestly having a hard time with it. It's not that they're doing it the way they want. It's just they don't even know what to do, right?
Right.
And I want to help them. And I'm like, well, how would you mentally help a player like that who might not be figuring? Because I don't want to tell them what to do. I just want to give them the information where they figure out what to do, right? Because
Yes.
that should be how it always works, that you figure it out, right? To a degree, right?
Right.
I looked at wrestling recently, and I've been going, what do they do? Wrestlers, they're role playing all the time.
No,
They're playing
all the time.
characters. And one of the main aims they have to do, either bad or good, whatever the character is, whatever they decide the character is before the audience meets the character, you got to get that over. And what I mean is, you get it over either by being booed or cheered or whatever, but whatever the character is, you want the audience to believe that that is what the character is. Remember, you decided it before you meet the audience. Now you got to show the audience the character that you're trying to express. You're trying to get it over. I think role playing a character and developing a character is actually gameplay. And so I actually tell players, in my personal opinion, if you say it's organic, I think you're actually not playing the game. And here's what I mean by this. It's not to be controversial. It's just to say, I think you're actually meant to make the effort to develop the character out of the gate through every line of interaction you're having early on with the character.
Well, yeah,
every question should be important. And
shouldn't the best characters are going to be the ones where you have a clear
and
idea.
a lot of players, when they say organic, what happens to them is they don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, how about I just give you a couple of tools? And then do that, and then organic stuff from that will occur. But you do have to put some effort in on character development to make it happen. If not, you could be in a 2-year campaign, right?
I think the alignment system that came with D&D that a lot of people hate.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that. Go on.
Actually, is massively important. Even if originally it's a secret alignment system, and that makes everybody go, "What?" But it makes sense. If you stop and think about it, because you have these private conversations with your game master about your alignment.
Of course,
And the game master does their best to explain, what that means. And then that gives you a personality type, an idea.
Something to work off,
behaviors your character will probably do, all right? And then you've got to figure out how to make that happen. But in reality, because really old D&D, where you kept your alignment secret, it's just awesome. You could be an evil character pretending to be good.
Well, you could be lawful evil. You could be all kinds of, like, I played lawful characters in good groups where no player knew it was a lawful evil character the whole time but he followed the law. He respected the system. He liked order over chaos, right?
Right.
So I could play it off like he'd actually help out the good people in the town if it meant kept order instead of chaos, so he made more money or did something or got a job, right?
Yeah, bureaucrats are great at being lawful.
Yeah.
So my point being is you could have a group of people and everybody think, well, we must be all kind of neutral or whatever, right? And in fact, you've got all this player versus player behind the scenes that nobody knows about, and it's going to bubble up at some point. I mean, you could do those kind of games back in the day, but that's why alignments, even if everybody knows each other's alignments, they're helpful in that they give people some kind of direction. Okay, I'm the kind of guy that will trip my friends and let the zombies eat them to get away, because that's what my alignment would do.
Well, back in the old school, there'd be various versions depending on the DM you're running into. Like one DM would tell you, look, alignments, he wouldn't even let you, most DMs wouldn't let you play like chaotic evil or certain extreme alignments. They would tell you, like, look, most alignments are a guide, and it's not meant, you don't have to go to the extremes, and you can be lenient on some of this stuff. You don't have to just be extreme. You can actually be okay with something that might not totally fit your alignment, but hey, it's not that bad. You can turn your head and walk away, right? So some DMs will tell you, no, you got to play your alignment for what it is. Some guys will tell you some things you got to be extreme about, and some things you don't. Right. And it's like, which guy were you going to run into on the alignment system, that time, right?
So that's where giving people, like, sit down and give me like 3 things your character will never ever do, and 3 things your character will always do. When those kind of tools are helpful for people figuring out how they're going to play a character, especially if they don't know what they're doing. And if they're really new to role-playing games, a lot of times they're just trying to wrap their heads around what dice do I roll in X, Y, or Z situation?
Oh yeah, I
What
was.
modifier do I use?
Yeah.
So I think it's super unfair to expect new players or even new GMs to be playing like they've been playing since the 70s.
Oh no.
Nuts.
No.
And I see
No.
people put that expectation out there, and it's just like, that's insane.
If you've
I mean,
heard, like, I've probably done 100 videos where I say, go and break your leg for a year and a half, and then I'll talk to you, and I won't criticize anything you're doing.
right.
I say
Everyone's
that to
got to
any
figure
game
out what
master.
they're doing and what
Yeah.
kind and what style of game they like, too. I mean, and that goes for players, not just the game masters. Some people like
It's a
very.
two-way street on being humble, though. You get some of these guys that will come in and they haven't even ran enough to break their legs enough to find out where they're making mistakes, and they're already telling you that they know more than God about games. And it's like, well, dude, relax. It's okay.
If I
I
brought all
won't
the
tease
books for
you
one
for
over here and propped him down, my face would disappear.
Yep. No,
No
I know.
human being can remember
You're not meant to
all that,
remember everything.
and you're
No,
not meant to.
you're meant to.
Those are
I always say
tools.
with D&D,
That's all they are.
you're meant to know how to access the information or make a decision on your own.
Okay.
Those two things are the things you need to know. It's not about remembering, it's about access.
Yeah.
So what I do is I always
Core
advise
rules.
DMs, any information you think you need to know, don't leave it in the book. Write
Okay.
notes. Have
Write
notes.
notes.
Have it accessible to
Sticky
you
notes
quickly.
are a godsend. People use them.
They really are. Yeah. And it's just I call it need to know information. And for the rest of it, you still just need to know how to access it. You don't need to remember the book, every detail, just access points,
Right.
the index. You got to know where the thing is so you can quickly go, hello, there you go.
And DM screens are, yes, some people use them to hide their dice, all that rolls, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they're, you want to know what the main best use of them I found is putting important information on both sides of it. So some
100%.
stuff for the players.
You're right.
Like especially if they're learning to do something, or you got a new game mechanic that nobody's dealt with before, just having that out there, or something you want the group to remember not to do at the table, or whatever it is, right? Whatever everybody's working on. And you put that on their side, so they've got easy access, big letters. Don't worry about the stupid pictures looking cool. It's a vertical surface is what it is, and it helps you hide your mess over here of notes, and and that's really. And then you have like your important little sticky notes and stuff on the vertical surface as well, or your map or whatever you're looking at, especially if you're doing just a verbal thing. And you can still, as a DM, which is what I prefer to do, is roll the dice out where everybody can see it.
That's all I've ever done. Yep.
Unless you want to play a game where you are rolling the dice behind the screen and you just want to randomly roll the dice every now and then, knowing that the dice aren't going to affect anything, but because of the tension level you want in the game, you want to freak out the players.
Well, here's how open-minded I am. I might have it. I might have an opinion that you hear me say on YouTube, right? Like, I think fudging dice is cheating, and people are like, oh, blah blah blah. But like in real life, I know DMs that I support that fudge dice, and I support them, and I give them ideas about how they should fudge their dice. Even though you hear a video where I say I think it's that. Here's the thing: I don't enforce my opinions on other people,
and I hated it, and that's one of the reasons I'm loath to do it. So my fix is, if I don't want them failing, you don't roll the dice at that moment. If it's that sort of situation, and especially if it's something minor, like can you walk down the stairs? I mean, and there's no reason why they couldn't. Don't be rolling dice for every little thing. Yeah. That's silly. Roll the dice for the things that matter.
Okay? Same thing with skills. A lot of games where it should just be automatic success. Okay. It's a very minor thing. Don't make the dice roll. And if you don't, like, here's another thing a lot of game masters do instinctively when they're calling for dice rolls. They do it, and they don't have an idea what failure is going to be.
Right.
They're you see them get lost. Yeah. You'll fail, and they'll be like,
Yeah. So no, for whatever game you're playing, know what your ranges are for easy, moderate, hard, extra hard. No. Kind of before you start the game, go have that already in your head, so that, and then it's just be consistent with it. You don't have to have like, well, this is a 12 and this is a 15 and this is a 13. Don't do that.
Dice roll should always matter.
Just pick a number that is your base easy, base moderate, base
Yeah.
hard. I mean that's like probably the most solid advice out there on that stuff, and have your idea what that is.
Yeah, what success is and what failure is. So you know for sure when
Right.
that dice fails that you have an answer
And
and
like
what
I
that
said,
means.
if you really want to terrify them, there's always escalating critical.
Yeah, and even worse is
That's
I just
terrible.
seen some game masters where they sort of screw the player characters with something extreme because
Yep.
they didn't have an answer, and the answer they come to is the worst
Yeah.
on the spot, right? It's just not a good one.
But
It's like,
never,
oh,
never, and one of my rules is never bring people into a game that you know is potentially just utterly lethal, and don't tell them that.
no,
Because if
communication
you
is so
tell them
important.
straight out the gate, you have your character, your little piece of paper, your little paper person will probably most likely die. But this is about
I
finding
don't do
out.
session
I'm
zero. I don't
Yep.
really believe in the session zero thing, but I believe the social contract includes clear communication to players about
Right.
what they're getting into.
Right.
I 100% agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and find out that you're if you're all on the same page, so you don't have weird stuff happening at your table that
exactly.
everybody's like, because everybody talks about this immersion thing and what it is, but
Yeah.
nothing harshes the vibe of a table faster. I don't care what style of game you're playing. I don't even
Yeah.
care if it's super mechanical.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
you hit,
I'm
you
here.
don't hit, you hit, you don't roll for damage, hit, right. That's all you're doing, right?
hmm
Um, Nothing ruins a game faster than bizarre something the
That you haven't
majority of
accepted
the table is not ready to deal
to
with and
accept. Yeah.
doesn't want to. So yeah, make sure that
Immersion death.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I've got the gold star story on that. So yeah. But so that's why it's important to kind of like make sure people are on the same page in general. So like there's games I would love to play with people,
Mhm.
but unless we have only adults who are all on the same page, I'm
Yep.
not playing those games.
Well, because you
It
feel
doesn't
almost.
mean that the game's creepy or
Oh,
cringy, but maybe it's got some aspect to it that I don't think is appropriate for minors who may be at the table. And most of the time when I'm playing
yeah.
role playing games, it's a mixed bag of age group. So that
Right
means
away
we
would
have
worry me. It
the
would tell you
PG.
the game master. I mean, I would hope a game master is never trying to trick players into their game. I'm like, I
No,
would never want. I want to have a good time,
you're right,
and so I want to make sure that the people getting in know what they're getting into, so they have a good time with me.
right,
And that's the whole. I mean, whatever you want to call a good time, but you get what I'm saying. Is everybody at least accepts the outcome, bad,
right.
good, or whatever, right?
Well, and that's what I try to tell people. A character can be killed.
hmm
Let's just look at character death there, and it
Yeah,
still be a good time. It still
yeah,
be a good game. And heck,
1,000,000%.
and
Yeah,
if you got a DM who's really or a game master, especially in the fantasy stuff, that's
yeah.
really open to not just you're dead, um, but something happening after
Could I
that.
tell you something interesting that I do in my own game?
Oh yeah,
I do have it where you can be resurrected in the game, right? And so
right,
when you die, if you have did your save versus death roll and it's been a success, so you can be raised, right? Your character has had a good roll and your body's intact. You haven't fallen into a volcano. Uh,
right,
you'll end up in this zone where you're actually still role playing your character in a death zone, and you can even run into people there that I have where you can compete with them in the game and win your life back without needing a spell casted on you to come back. And I role play
exactly.
the whole thing. Yeah,
And I've told people like that it's a missed opportunity,
it
like
really
doing
is.
things like that, and maybe not every game is that's going to work out for everybody. But
Exactly
even
true.
just doing something like giving people a death certificate and saying we got a wall of fallen, you know, you know,
But
people,
players have always been excited about that part where they
yeah,
get to keep role playing their
right.
character in a way because they're
Like
in this death zone, right?
tell or it's just being like, okay, now the combat's over. Timmy died. Um, you know,
Mhm.
so Sir Timmy, this is what you see. And you can do like the
Yep.
whole Valkyrie scene or the angels or whatever, and you do the whole description thing,
That is
and
a beautiful thing. Yep.
and you can give a good death. You can
You
have
can
a
do a
really, really
funeral.
dramatic death as well that saves the party, or you can have ridiculous deaths where
Well, you can have
everybody's
fun.
laughing.
We're nerds. I've had it
Yeah,
where it's funerals where players have been playing together for so long with the characters are at like level 20. A character at high level dies, and they have a funeral where all the players with the
that
characters
should
do
totally be
speeches. Right?
happening.
Yeah.
I'm straight up, man. We all know what happens. They die in the dungeon. Their friends loot their body. Their friends leave the body to rot.
Yeah.
It happens in so many games, right?
Yeah.
I am 100% okay with the player of the dead character getting to be a ghost that haunts them until
Sure.
they go
A million
back
percent.
and make something right.
I'm insane like you. See, I think me and you are more like than we think. Here's what I think. I like a serious game that can have bizarre stuff happen in it.
Yeah.
Like it's not Gonzo say overall, but Gonzo can happen. Do you
You
get
need
what I'm
those
saying?
points. You need
Yeah,
those
there might be points like a gate to Ravenloft somewhere,
Mhm.
and
Right.
you're in Gonzo land for a minute, but then 15, you know what I mean? An hour later, you're back in your place, and you
Right.
almost were killed, but you survived, right? You got in for a second, bound the gate back out, right? But
Right.
I love having bizarro stuff happen, but in a serious setting because everything is then taken serious. And I
Right.
do like it's a weird combination of having it taken very serious, like it's a serious world, but you're meeting bizarre in a serious world. That's what I liked about, not to get too off topic, but I never liked zombies, the movies, the comics. I never liked them
Mhm.
until 2000. I think it was 2005. They did a remake of an old zombie movie, and it was about going to a mall, Dawn of the Dead.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
the difference with this one I found compared to what I ever watched before was it felt more like the real world. Like it was more settled into real life the way me and you know it.
Right.
And then instead of a comic book world, and then you're given the zombies, the bizarre
Right.
zombies in the real
Well,
world. That made me go, what the fuck? I love that.
well, I'm in a pretty crazy game right now,
Mhm.
and when you look at our characters, they are not your standard fantasy role playing game characters. They are in the sense of what they
Do
can
tell.
do, but they aren't in the sense of what their characters are because they all
Mhm.
come from different places and timelines and things.
Yeah.
So, so the first few sessions, we have people walking, we're role playing our characters and we're in complete denial about what's going on. You know,
Awesome. Yeah.
because dinosaurs aren't supposed to exist, and
So
where
you're
how do
playing
we
them
get
dead
how do we
serious
get to
in
this
this.
drink
Yep.
city? What are you guys talking about? Somebody else, because we got a guy from Home Depot. I mean, so when you think about it, your average fantasy role-playing game character until
Mhm.
recently, well, I'm not saying that having something different completely gone so is bad, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But if you're playing in one of these settings where it's very medieval and you got the villages and you got
Yeah.
just some magic, then anything outside of what would be the norm is
Mhm.
what they're going off and experiencing. And so that would be very abnormal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's
Exactly.
that's exactly how it has to be presented. And so it's the same
Yeah.
thing with like a horror film. Yeah, zombies aren't normal. Vampires aren't normal. Werewolves. So for it to have the impact, the more it's like reality. And then, oh gosh, we're the Scooby
Well,
Doo
I think you're hitting the
Club.
nail on the head. It's
You
you're
know,
looking at it the same, almost the same way I do. I hear people go, "I want gritty, realistic," or "I want Gonzo," and I'm like, uh, in our games, those two things go together.
they can incredibly
Yeah,
go together
yeah,
if they're done right.
yeah.
Now they can also have this high magic, super science
They can destroy each
craziness.
other. Yeah,
You can, and that's fine too. You
yeah,
can go on the extremes,
yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that, or no magic.
Well, there's right ways to do
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I prefer the mix, but I'm not like I know people out there that I know that do nothing but Gonzo, for example, and they're fabulous. Like I played their games; they're great sessions, right?
Yeah.
It just if you said, Steven, would you be good at running that? I just don't know if I'd have the passion for that type
Well,
of
and
thing, right?
that's one of the nice things about visiting other game masters and other
Yeah.
tables and things like that, or putting something together. Is you get to see the kind of genre different people do very well,
Oh,
or
exactly.
things they're interested in, or things they put the time and effort into, and styles difference. And I think that's important. And I think we have happening now a lot of people stuck in very specific little boxes.
Yeah.
And if they would just go out and play with the other kid next door,
They're more alike than they
the
think.
other, yeah, and
They're closer to alike than they
they
think.
realize, so that's why you'll never see me saying smack to about 5e players.
They're more like us. They're way
yeah,
more like us.
They really are. I mean, yeah, there's some vocal people, but there's vocal people in every hobby that just drive everybody up the wall.
1,000,000%.
Okay,
Yep, yep.
so, and I don't care what you're doing, quilting, crocheting,
Yeah,
planting
I
tulips,
agree.
it doesn't matter.
Self-help
So-
videos.
So just, you gotta ignore those people.
Yeah.
Do not fall for the trap that they are the font of all whatever. And
your reaction also, here's my only criticism on some people in that zone. I would say some of it is there's people that are troublemakers, and I do see too much trouble being made by them. But there's sometimes I think the audience is guilty with the way it reacts to a simple opinion. Right.
yeah.
You get a lot of people that do get hurt feelings over simple opinions and it can be the majority sometimes, right?
I think people lose perspective for some reason.
Yeah.
On the internet.
But I do agree. There's a lot of people that do what you're talking about. On the
I don't know if it's because we're zooming, if we're typing. I just don't know what gets lost in the translation, so to speak.
Yeah.
And people get very defensive.
They do.
If they could sit down and talk, especially things like game mechanics and style, a lot of times they find out they're not at odds. Like, so the first D&D games I played, the majority of them, and then other role-playing games, we did not have miniatures. And then when we did get miniatures, it was like one little dude to represent our person instead of the little late drawing we made.
Well, let's talk about miniatures, because I know you like miniatures.
Yeah, and I love miniatures.
I think you like both styles. I think you're just one person who doesn't care.
And so for the majority of my role-playing life, it was in fact not using miniatures or battle boards, even though I had little armies and stuff like that.
It was more theater than mine.
Different.
Yeah.
That's wargaming, and I wasn't playing the kind of war games other people were. I was playing.
Well, in the 74, I don't throw this detail out there to hammer on people, but people forget that the game for the first 2 or 3 years never used miniatures. It came out as pure theater of the mind. You talk to any group from the 70s, they all agree with me. 100% of them, even the TSR people that worked there, all Robert Kuntz says the same thing.
And if you did use something, it was because people were confused, and then you were drawing a picture.
About 2 years after it came out, people started using aids. They called them aids at the time.
Get the chess pieces down so we can explain to Timmy where the monster is, And then Timmy would be like, "Oh, the monster's here relative to me. It was this little."
But I have looked in the past to see if there was anyone who started that way. But no, even though it came from wargaming, the guys, for the first 2 years the books came out, it wasn't pitched with miniatures. So no one thought to use them. 2 years later was the first time you see what they call aids, combat aids, which become the miniatures later.
The idea was that if you were going to use miniatures in those original books, was that you would be playing chainmail and you would already have armies.
You would just go play chain. They looked at the games as separate, and even Gary and them looked at the games as separate, right?
So that would be like,
I actually support people that play with miniatures. This is another area where I know some people think I have a really harsh opinion on this, but in real life, I'll tell you something I think on here on the Open Square of Ideas. But in real life, I buy miniatures for friends. I play in games with them fillers when they need to with miniatures. I ran a 5e game now for a few sessions with miniatures.
It's just another tool.
Yeah. So, but people don't realize how open-minded I am around this, right?
Stuff, because I grew up making models too. So I like building stuff, and so to me,
I've seen some of your videos on that. Yep.
Yeah. And then I have like a centerpiece thing I can put down, randomly, in the game. And now, as you're walking through the jungle, you see this.
I'm with it. 100%.
oh, an arch of skulls? That does not bode well.
Like I always like people to know that I'm very open minded with a lot of things. It's just that again, it's just one of these areas where I'll say I like theater of the mind because I noticed a lot of people don't talk about it. So I was like, well, I'll just talk about the benefits of
Yeah,
theater of the
and we
mind.
didn't even have we didn't have a term for it. Like theater of the mind, that
Hmm.
terminology is actually new to me. Because like I'm like, what do they mean theater of the mind? I had to watch videos to find
Yeah.
out from other people what other people were talking about. And I'm like, oh, you mean like playing the game normal? You know?
Well, yeah, it's a but you want to know what? In the discussion overall, when you look at how people react and what they know and how they understand stuff, it is good to use language and use words where people will at least understand what it is you're talking about. If you can frame it in a good way, and a label has been put on it, that's not bad,
But
right?
if
Like
you want to
a
do
label,
like
yeah.
the war end or more wargaming end of it with the ranges and all that and
You're
the
going to go
grids,
miniatures.
then go for it. I mean, I think it's perfectly fine if you want to do the more relative, where you don't worry about the grid system so much. Do
Yeah,
that. I mean, it's all fun,
yeah.
and not everybody can visualize. Like we found that out. Like
But and you
when we
remember there
first
was
had our first games with my niece and nephew, we were blown away. My husband and I, those kids could not visualize.
oh, I hear you.
And,
I don't.
and so
Well, here's what
we
I
were
encountered on
building
here. Yeah,
ramps, we were building things, we were getting things out.
yeah.
Like we're like, okay, yeah, we got to find some minis here, and we got
Yeah.
a ton of unpainted
But
ones over here,
imagine you've done,
and
yeah, yeah,
and and
yeah.
we started, so they could
I'll let
get
you
it into
finish.
their head. Oh, this is
Yeah,
the ramp going up to the castle. The castle is now the stack of books. I mean,
yeah.
they really had a problem with it. Now, can they visualize 100 times better now? Absolutely.
Oh,
Do
practice
they
it. That's all we
actually
do for
need
you.
minis now?
No,
No. You know, but they had to get there. And some people, they do have a
yeah.
problem with visualization. They will have a
I've
problem with
never had, I
visualization in real
totally
life.
understand. I ran into lots of players that need some
Yeah.
help and need some more direction than other players when
So
you're, but
what
hey,
we're
my
supposed to
only issue with
shame them?
YouTube, yeah, my
I
point
don't
I was
understand
trying to
that
make.
attitude.
All
And
right. Could
why
I
would
make a
you do
point
that?
though? There's some guys on YouTube that spent years saying you can't do certain things with theater of the mind in combat. And I was like, well, I've done that 1,000 times, so I think you can.
Yeah, and
Right. So
how
that was my only issue with
brilliant.
some of the statements they would make. It was like, look, look, I'm not trying to humiliate certain people, but maybe, like you said, maybe that guy's not that creative or he has a hard time with certain things and he needs the help with miniatures. And I'm okay with that. I'm
Well,
okay
I
with that.
sat down with
All right.
two people who are
Yeah.
very well versed in ranged weapons,
Yeah.
and I did a question and answer thing with them. If they were to make a role playing game with firearms, what kind of mechanics would they be looking for? And so we had a big discussion, and I did a video. It's a longer video
Yeah.
with two people who don't do that's not their. I mean, they play role playing games, but they just play or GM the game. They don't actually sit there and try to necessarily create mechanics. But we sat there and we discussed that,
Yeah.
because one, I thought it would be interesting
Yeah.
to bring people in who do that, and two, a way to show people, particularly new people to the gaming
Mhm.
system, how games get stripped down and get super crunchy, and why this back and forth thing happens
I think
is
all
because
game designers should have one principle, and it's this: the illusion of the experience. Like, it's just say you want somebody to be able to shoot a gun like you see them in real life or see them in the movie, and they're shooting freely, boom, boom, boom. They reload quick, whatever. You want players to feel that during a game. So I always say to game designers, here's a principle you should have: forget all the details. The illusion of the experience is the most important thing with your
we
rules.
talked about that,
Yeah.
how you could get so far down in the weeds in creating a game mechanics that,
Mhm.
yeah, it's very realistic, but it takes you 50 minutes to
So
resolve
it doesn't
one
feel like
thing.
you're shooting a gun in the
Yeah,
game. That's
no,
what
so
I
it
mean.
doesn't feel right. So then
Yeah.
it's like you have to abstract that. I mean, they
It has to
understood
feel
that.
like you're doing it. Yeah.
Right. They completely understood that. And So that was part of why I wanted to do that, was
Yeah.
so people could people who are coming into role playing games can
They could see how people get
understand,
there.
yeah, how
Yeah.
games develop, and the pendulum thing that happens in the rule sets.
Yeah.
It goes back and forth, and it's really, you really want, there's a sweet spot, and it's really important to keep a game in that sweet spot
Oh, definitely.
for playing.
It's really, I always say, like, again, the illusion of the rules is just to make sure that it's like, does the player feel like they have a character shooting a gun in a shootout in the game?
Right.
Or are they rolling 50 dice rolls? If not, simplify whatever you're doing so it feels, because the feel is going to be the
Right.
important part.
And they have to
In the
have the
game test on
thrill
that.
when you're
Yeah.
when they're in a dangerous situation. They have to have the thrill of feeling that their little paper person is
That's why you can
in
mess
a
up
dangerous
combat so easily, right? Any
right.
game can mess up combat because, like, that's why I eliminate some of the rules. I don't use like speed factor on weapons, say in the initiative thing in D&D or in second edition. Some things I just drop if there's any unnecessary time
Yeah.
consumption that thing takes up, and the more I drop stuff, and the faster combat gets, the funner it is.
Yes, that's what I
Right?
find too. Nobody likes. I've met very few people who really sit there and go, yes, I want to have
A
a 4
2 hour combat,
hours
yeah.
long
Or 4
battle.
hours. Nobody
You
does.
know, nobody wants to do that. You
I
know,
mean, my
it's like, I'm
longest
still
combats
not
ever, like
dead.
if you get into an hour combat in my game, that is overtime. But
Right.
I would hope
Nobody
it's
wants that.
entertaining all the way through. But in my combat, it's like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. It's like very rare that you would ever hit something like 30 minutes or even going
Yeah,
above that, right? Ever.
you want the feel of it. I mean, it's always going to be slower than real life because we're playing a game, but
Of course,
you
of
want the
course. Yeah.
feel of that the game is progressing, things are happening.
There
Um,
you go.
you know,
And
and
it's not necessary in the same pace in all areas.
right,
Traps can be
right,
slow because you can interact and walk around, or you can
right.
be slower in the town. But in
Yeah,
fighting, if it's slow,
yeah.
it's
It
boring.
needs to feel.
Yeah,
You need to have that sense of urgency
you do.
versus, yeah, we can sit here and conspire for 30 minutes while the goblins are slashing at us. No, you can't.
Well, combat is
You know,
chaos and should be
it's chaos.
exciting.
Yeah.
And exciting is
So
quick and fast, right?
so yeah, that's why sometimes I do some strange things on that I haven't seen any other channels do. Um, and they're kind of
What do you
nerdy,
tell? Last couple
but
minutes here. Let's
there's
talk.
a reason, there's a what do you call it, a logic to my madness. Um,
Yep.
uh, and I can nerd out on game mechanics. I've done it. I've done it
Oh, I've heard you do it.
after. I've done it on other streams, and then
Yep.
afterwards, I'm in the green room with somebody for the next 4 hours from a game company, and that's all we're talking about is
Oh,
mechanics.
a compliment to you there, RPG Grandma. You're one of the best talkers on YouTube, and I don't know why you don't have a bigger audience. And I could tell the other streamers get it. Other people acknowledge it. That's why you get invited on all kinds of streams. They know you're a good talker. You're safe to have on. If I'm worried about dead air that night, I just got to invite you. And if you say yes to come on, like this hour, I knew from the get go, I couldn't even ask you half the questions I have because I knew it would turn into a longer
Keep
discussion.
going.
And I wanted to.
I got some of the things done ahead of time, so you can go a little
Oh,
longer.
okay. Well,
Or
we got
you
a
can
few
go
more
a
here.
little
So,
longer.
all right. Well, let's all right. Let's go to play. You were talking about it earlier, and I want to know how you feel overall. Player versus player. Now, let me get to first off. I mean, in all aspects, from subtle backstabbing that harms another character's reputation to outright keeping the treasure and not sharing it, or even worse, a character killing another character.
Okay, again,
All right.
back to that original thing of warning people.
Alignment. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, warning people. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I'm going to play a game that's not really team builder game
Yeah.
versus player game, they are very different. If we're
Yeah.
going to play a game of potential paranoia,
Which they are.
um, um, they they're all going to have heads up some way somehow. I'm going to tell them that this is potential, and probably they're all going to know it's a potential because I'm probably just going to tell them. But I'm going to probably do things like give each of them a secret, give each of them information that
Yeah.
only they know, that
That's
is
a great way to
relative to
approach it.
their character that may put them at odds with other characters.
Because you're playing into the player versus player as a game master there. You're not going against it. This is actually the game where you sort of play, you lean in on the player versus player aspect, right?
And correct. And in those situations, now they can choose to act on that however they want. So if they end up deciding to be a team despite everything, and now they're going to go against what's in their background that they were given, the secrets.
That's their freedom.
That's their freedom of choice. Absolutely. And I'll tell them that you all have freedom of agency. You do not have to go along with, these things, but understand there's consequences to everything.
Yep.
So it's up to you. You chose to play a warlock, let's say. So warlocks, come on, they're not nice guys. So
100%.
So they're not fluffy, all right?
And we're in medieval timeline. There is some prejudice here.
So these are your secrets. These are consequences if you don't do certain things. So like if we're going to play that kind of game, I'm going to set it up from the beginning so everybody knows the potential is that they might get stabbed in the back because they're living in that kind of world.
Yeah, you want to enjoy it in a way, don't you? That's the whole point of leading into it, right?
Right. It's kind of like when you play those murder mystery games, if you've ever done it, and everybody's role playing. They're fun, by the way, if everybody dresses up in costume.
I've seen. Yep.
We did. I went to a Halloween party, and it was Call of Cthulhu was the theme. So we were all 1920s.
Sweet.
So everybody's dressed 1920s, but we didn't know who the cultists were. We didn't know. We didn't know any of that, and you didn't find out who you were until you were handed your bag.
And was that an all-night thing? Like, did that guy take
hours?
Thing.
It was awesome. And then even the TV was playing like all Lovecraft movies and stuff, based stories and things, and spooky music,
So the atmosphere of the dress. Oh man.
Yeah. And people are getting murdered left and right by cultists or getting turned into cultists, and
you see, I've never liked LARPing. And you just made LARPing sound fun.
LARP Call of Cthulhu, people, for Halloween. It's fun as heck. If it's done right.
You really did. You sold me on that. That sounds like fun.
Outfits, the do it. The gangs,
way better than running around as fake knights. Yeah, hitting each other with sticks.
Whatever, And then you go, and then you find out whoever's hosting it is the one who sets up all the secrets, and then gives out the murder mystery packets that tells you whether you're
so clearly without needing to ask you, I don't really need to ask you. You're open to both styles, either team or player versus player. Yeah. You don't have some grudge against either way of playing the game. You're open to them. Cool.
Yeah. So because variety's the spice of life.
1,000,000%.
And there's going to be times when people are going to want to play that game that where they're all out for themselves and their own agendas, and then there's going to be times where they're going to want to be the heroic team, the adventure league going off and saving the day. So it's okay. There's going to be times when groups actually where you might even want to run a group versus group game, and people are like no, and but you could. I mean, if you have enough players, you could have like our table. When everybody's there, it's huge. Mm-hmm. So we could, in theory, split the group in two
and have them compete.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Or at least have them compete against an equal-sized group of NPCs trying to achieve the same goal.
I wouldn't do it for a long campaign term because it'd be so hard to get everyone together. For like a one-shot for 2 or 3 sessions, for sure. If I had that group agree for like 2 or 3 months to get together and say just for a short run like that, and we could do several sessions, I'd want to do maybe a bit more than a one-shot, but I wouldn't do a long campaign. But yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, that needs some time though, right?
Right.
You gotta have that.
And
The
that's
adventure
all stuff you have to think out ahead and make sure everyone's on the same thing. But But I'm just saying
But it is an excellent thing if you can pull it off.
Yeah, it's an excellent thing, having people, even if they're in the same team, so to speak, they might still find themselves at odds when they go back home, because at home they're the people they're associated with, the guilds they're in,
well, you can still
families they
disagree,
belong to.
even if you're not playing in a game where you're going to backstab the other person.
Right.
You could still have disagreements that just make it hard for you guys to make decisions together as a team. Right. And that conflict actually becomes an issue that you got to work through. And you still have to work through it.
Home base, the people who go back to home base every game. Home base, the people at home base can have their own agendas that then affect the team.
I would just tell players, here's what I tell players that want to have conflict in a game that's really not focused on PvP. Here's what I tell them. I don't mind conflict, but you are responsible for making the team aspect work. Right. So you have to work together as a team against each other, ironically, and go, okay, we're going to draw the drama out a bit between each other, but don't worry, group. We're not going to aim to have it screw, the overall team aspect. Like, we'll make it work so it doesn't blow us up, but we're going to play out a bit of this conflict.
Right.
Might even get into a punching match, but we won't kill each other, and it won't affect us getting the treasure over at the mountain to go to the thing.
Right. And it's just so that you can have interest
in color
happen and color and NPCs that are interesting. So like, in the town of Mayberry, you
don't got to kill everyone.
Yeah, you don't have to kill everyone, but maybe everybody in Mayberry doesn't always get along with Aunt B.
Isn't it interesting though to have the argument with the NPC instead of just trying to kill everyone, like to see why they don't like you? I don't really like you guys. Like, why don't you like? Instead of like attack him.
Yeah.
Right? Like you meet a lot of players. Kill them all.
And you remember the campaign with the pink pony was also the campaign where the whole town of Hamlet, the whole town was slaughtered by the player character.
Oh my. Look at you. Look. That's the shit grid right there. That's beautiful.
It ran the whole gambit.
That was beautiful. That's the best look I've seen on you ever. There's
a story behind how that went down. And then that had horrible
RPG Grandma, that's one of the best shit-eating grins I've ever seen in my fucking life. I'm sorry, that was so good.
No, I was a player.
That was so good.
When it all happened, and as everything happened to make it turn into this horrible massacre, you're going, oh, this is so bad. This is so bad. Right? And you're helping murdering everybody because you have to survive.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
This is so bad.
It's simple decision solutions.
Yeah.
You kill everyone, it will just go our way, won't it?
Yeah.
Well.
yeah, there was consequences. Because I was the next GM, and so I had to have consequences for what we had done. So.
Well, here I got some fun ones coming up for you, and these are simple ones, but I want you to take them however you want. Meaning, any question I ask is not to lead you ever on anything, right? Mm-hmm. If you take the question how you want, you answer it how you want, right? So these are going to be really simple, quick ones, and I'll do one at a time. Classes or no?
I played both.
Okay.
Star Frontiers. Okay, Star Frontiers is not a class system, yet it's one of my favorite games. D&D is a class system, yet it's one of my favorite games.
So there you go. That answer is neutral. Okay, next one.
The problem is I see them like templates that do the same thing.
Okay,
they would get there differently.
Yeah.
So if you look at classes as a profession, that's just a bundled group of skills.
Yeah, you're right. You are right.
Okay, or do you look at skills, but you got to bundle them together into a template?
So basically, what you're saying is, in one game, there's no label on it, but it is a class.
It ends up becoming a class.
Yeah.
I mean, when you stop and think about it, I have GURPS. GURPS is a great example. It has all these wonderful skills you can do, micro games and whatnot, and you end up spending points to create a character, and invariably to do that, so your brain doesn't explode, you end up using a template. And
So
then
I get what you're saying.
And then you have so many points left over that you end up fleshing the character out in some unique way. And then we scoot over to D&D.
Yeah.
Because GURPS is one extreme. And you've got classes, and invariably, though, there's some skill proficiencies. There's some extra things that even in the older stuff, that the GM is just going to rule you can do without having the skill system. They're going to be like, well, you live in a desert, of course you know how to ride a camel.
So I get what you're saying. You're saying every game has a class system, but what you would call the ones that don't use the term class, you would call that a custom class system, where it's more about the player creating the class, where when you get to D&D, it's a bit of player influence, but most of the class is already designed for you by the game when you're picking it. And that's the difference. So you're saying there is no class system game. It's just a custom class versus a class game.
Pretty much. Cool. That's it.
Yeah. All right, cool. And all right, next one. Levels or no?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I play a lot of level games, or a lot of games that allow you, if they're using the points where you expend the experience points to improve the individual skills of a character. So you're still leveling up. You're just going about it differently. I've also played some games that don't have, because they're old, did not originally have class or point systems or any of that. So there's nothing. There's no leveling up.
Yeah, there's points.
Those games are about resources.
Yeah.
Improving your resources and the character's knowledge. And so those games are fun in the sense that you always know how many hit points you have, or whatever it is it's going to take.
I would imagine a lot easier on Game Masters too.
Yeah. And then it really does become about the treasure, so to speak, and the renown and the patrons and all this other stuff. More than it becomes about
how many. A lot of scavenging. A lot of scavenging of information and items that go on in that game more than, say, a D&D game, right?
Right. It's all about acquiring a better gun. It's all about getting better medical supplies.
Because you're not guaranteed any improvements by level. So if you want to do more damage or have a better shot, you got to get a better scope for the rifle. You got to get the better bullet for the gun or whatever. Right. You got to get the better this and that. Yeah. Makes sense.
It's those games are much more like that. And they're they're a different feel.
Yeah.
When it comes to leveling up, I have to admit, even though I love some games, if the game mechanics aren't correct, a lot of games are broken. This is not picking on any game.
Of course.
You got your favorite game out there. It's very hard
including
to find
mine.
It doesn't break down at some point.
Yeah.
You need to be cognitive of that if you're a game master, that there are certain games that they just don't function well as they could after a certain level, or you need to be prepared for the consequences of those levels.
Well, that's what I talked about. I talked to game masters about games falling apart. Yeah.
With giving out stuff in the non-level games.
Yeah.
If you hand somebody, look, somebody basically gave me a tactical nuclear weapon in a D&D game in Ravenloft. Guess who ended up using it?
You?
Yeah. Are you a part of it?
Of course. It's like if you're going to give it to
you, go all in, people.
And that's how it goes.
But I mean, I nuked part of Ravenloft, as my solution to try to get rid of the bad guy. So do not give an artificer
to a player
thermonuclear warhead weapon. They're going to.
It's same as if you need the potion to defeat the campaign. Don't give it to the players early, so a guy can just go, "Oops, I dropped it."
Yeah. So you do have to be cognitive of the things that you give out, whether
Yeah.
what it does, and how it's going to affect the campaign,
Yeah, of course.
or the adventure or the setting, in the games where it's about resources as well. That's why resources that run out are always good in those kind of resource heavy games. That it's more about the stuff than it is about the.
But that can be so much fun. I remember playing a D&D game where we would play goblins and we weren't going to bother doing levels. We just sort of set them at level 3, I think it was.
Yeah,
I said, this is the whole game. So it sort of becomes a D&D game without levels, ironically. We ran it for about 8 months, a friend of mine did. And the whole game was about scavenging. It turned into that sort of non-level scavenging resources to improve our situation.
Original Metamorphosis Alpha and original Gamma World.
Yeah.
It's all about scavenging and getting stuff.
It's a lot of fun.
It's
amazingly a lot of fun. Yeah, it is.
And you can totally do D&D the same way. It's not that hard.
No.
I do suggest you do the same things that those games do.
Set a level in D&D. Yeah.
You front load their hit points.
Because that's all we did was we decided on a level, set a level to the characters, and went, okay, that's it. No going up from there. And it was all, like you said, it was all improving the situation through knowledge and through items we were getting, right?
And the thing too is that does set, obviously, having third level characters who can never improve, go up against NPCs who can always improve is not cool. So you adjust.
You balance it out with items and options, right? Because I've seen guys take where they rolled like 14 for the highest number on their character, but by level like 10, they have enough magic items and just other things they've done and other things they've gotten in the game where the character's actually now really strong, right?
Right.
Like it went from an average character to a strong character, but the guy had to work and grind at the game and find the stuff and it was a great look at the end because he's like, man, I almost gave up on this character when I first rolled him up because the numbers were awful. But by the end, it's his favorite character.
Some of the best characters have terrible stats. They have maybe one good stat, like Neek, who goes eek, but the rest of the stats not so great. That's why she screamed eek a lot because she wasn't strong. Didn't have a lot of hit points. Never would. No wisdom. I mean,
and it forces you to have to be a better player,
right?
With limits.
Those characters are usually the funnest ones to play because
they push you to the corner. Yeah,
they require you to think.
There you go. See, and that's usually. I've always met people like writers in life where if you tell them, okay, you can write a book, they'll be like, okay, 5 years later they write the book. But if you tell them there's a deadline, they got to write the book in 6 months, you find out they can.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like they prove they could have done it 6 months, but without the pressure, without the challenge, without being put into that corner, you never know, right?
And also when you roll the what did they call them in Gamma World? See, I disagree with Gamma World. There's no such thing as a hopeless character. What it is a misunderstood character. So you roll a character and you go, oh my God, the stats. What am I going to do with that? Well, that's where you talk to your GM, your referee, and go, look, I like they're not good at anything. What am I going to do with this? And you just before we try to make them pass their basic raw abilities.
Yeah.
That's when you talk, and that's when you go, well, what are our options here? Is your character actually going to be a child? Is your character going to be an old man, old woman? Is your
experience is more important than how good your character is going to do?
Right. Is your character going to be, something completely out of the box that we haven't thought of yet? And let's talk about that. And then so then, because back to character development, they have to believe, they have to hope that what they've rolled up, okay, whatever it is, is going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
That there's some hope. So that's when, when you get the really rotten rolls, that's when,
the character has to be you got to find what's the cool aspect of role playing the character if they're not Superman or Superwoman.
Yeah. This is so yeah, you are the minimum wage guy who puts the groceries in the grocery sack at the grocery store,
Yeah.
and then everything starts happening.
But isn't that
Instead of
interesting?
looking
Would
at
that be
those bad numbers as bad numbers, they're simply the start place
exactly?
for a 0 level character who
Yeah.
maybe is 13, or maybe they're 10.
And it is role
And
playing. Why
something
not lean?
happens.
As a player when I was young, when I played all the time, if I had a weak character, I would lean into it. Meaning, if I just played, okay, this guy's going to be an average guy. That means all this stuff's going to be surreal to him.
Right.
I'm going to have him freak, even though he's a warrior who's brave enough to fight. He's still going to be freaked out by a goblin. Like, what the?
Right.
Yeah, like
Goblins are a real threat then, right?
But I lean into his mental weakness and his low numbers and not being that wise. And that becomes interesting, though. It makes the whole role play experience an whole interesting aspect. And I say, if you don't have the high numbers, that's what you should do, right?
And this is why, but everybody who's new listening should understand as well that you go through a player person development yourself.
Yeah,
so
you're
it's
100%
very,
right.
very natural and normal to want to have the badass character with all the great stats.
It is a game.
Be Superman, of course.
Yep.
And play those characters too.
Oh yeah.
But be open. At some point, you're going to realize playing a flawed character is cool too. I mean,
yeah, all aspects of characters are interesting,
right? And so but it's a very normal thing. And what you'll find, and what I've seen tend to happen, is the people who've played a long time are more likely to be like, yeah, I just roll it down the line and what I get. They're not into plug and play. They're not into point buy. They're not, and everyone's like, why is that? Why is that? No, it's, it's like, it's because they've already done the max characters. They've already done I spin all the points just right to maximize my combat ability or my medical skills or whatever. Or
you get some of the older guys, it's still like a bit of crafting of the character, meaning they won't ask for re-rolls on numbers and they'll take all the low numbers they roll, but they'll still want to place them where they want to place them, but they're not extreme about it, right? They're still old school in the way of like, I do like a little bit of crafting on my character because I'm a creative guy, but they're still old school in the aspect they don't care if they rolled an 8.
Right.
They'll play the 8. They'll put the 8
and
somewhere.
another thing is it's all preference. Just go with what the game master allows you to do when you're creating your characters.
100%.
So, and just work in that and don't stress about it, because whether you're rolling 3 D6s, a D20 to get your stats, which, hey guys, you could roll a 1.
Yeah.
Right? Now usually in those kind of games, 1980 Ardoon does that. Yeah. You can't be under 5. So if you roll a 1, you're going to be a 5. Okay. But
you want to know? Here's one of the things I've done for players over the years. Here's one of the things I've done for players over the years is just say, like, look, I won't make you play such a low number that you're drooling, but if you're willing to, I'll let you. But if you don't want to, I'll give you the most minimal number on that stat that you can have. And I won't force you to play a drooling character, but I won't let you re-roll either. I won't give you a high number.
I mean, who goes adventuring? I've argued for years. They fall into a very, if you thought about it, if you could really go out and fight dragons with a sword, who would do that?
Crazy people.
You're either mentally insane.
Yep.
You're the village idiot.
You might be. Yep.
Or you're super desperate, and you're probably a bit sketch if you're that desperate. So
there's a little bit of insanity that should be somewhat expressed somewhere within some of the characters that you're seeing.
If you roll low and you want to play the village idiot that's decided he's going to be Don,
go for it.
Don Quixote.
But see, I just give the freedom to players. Yeah, I just give the freedom to players to say, look, if you're that type of player that will play anything, my game is for you. If you're that type of player that will play at least the stupid guy who's not drooling, but he's going to be dumb. He's not going to be smart, right? And if you try to play this guy like he's smart, that's not who he is, right? So I'll make you play minimal, but that's the only thing I've done, and the only reason I've had to do that over the years is I'm the public game master.
Look, you know,
I meet too many people that argue with me over that
you
stuff.
play
So
2E.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you my favorite character race from 2E.
Okay.
The Gully Dwarves.
Gully Dwarves are awesome. I
Gully
love
Dwarves is
everything.
the best.
Yes. When people criticize stuff they don't like in the game, like from short characters like the gnomes, the Gully Dwarves, and I love it all. I love
Gully
every
Dwarves
detail.
are such a gold mine that's overlooked.
Bullywugs to this day are not that well used. I use them quite often in games, and I love bullywugs, and I find them to be a very underused monster, and they're so funny. There's so much comedy. There's so much funny. There's so much insanity with those little monsters.
Okay. You gotta switch it up.
Yeah, well, I do the serious setting, but I'll do the funny.
Yeah.
But I don't turn the experience into feeling like it's a joke.
Right.
Like it's still going to be feeling serious, even though it's crazy that this little frog guy is jumping out of the water with a spirit. You right?
Don't know if you've heard me say it. I've definitely typed it over the years. Don't make the DM invoke the pink dragon.
Okay. Give some details on that.
Well, Pink Dragon comes from one of the Dragon magazines. They did like an April Fool's monster thing, and it's one of the monsters in there. The Pink Dragon blows bubbles. Okay. It's cute. It's pink. It likes to tell jokes. It's freaking deadly. It can replicate any spell that's cast at it.
Oh my. That is seriously,
and if it doesn't like that you're not laughing at its jokes and you can't tell jokes,
it might blow you off. Yeah.
And its bubbles can capture you, and it can TKO a party.
I'm not shocked.
Pink dragon that looks cute and looks like it came from a kid's. If you actually sit down and the guy did a whole thing on YouTube. Just look it up, guys.
Yeah.
Pink dragon. What does it do? Just watch his video. You will understand what I mean when I say don't make the DM ever invoke the pink dragon. Your party is messed up. The players, you have messed up big time because the DM is now going to kill you, but they're going to do it hilariously.
Mm-hmm. I got this hornet called the spike hornet in my game I created years ago in the 90s, and what it does, and you gotta be very careful if you meet a certain animal that will be like all green, right? Like it could be a bunny, it could be a simple animal. It stings them and it dies, but what it leaves in them is this magic that will make the animal explode if you touch it. And it can explode and kill you. And I've had one group actually total party kill at level 1, grabbing on. I gave all the warning in the world, like you don't want to do this. They grab onto the bunny finally after it was quite obvious they shouldn't, and they're all standing around. And I'm like, okay, we're all within like 5 feet of him. I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm young at the time, asking the stupid DM question, of course. Yeah. Are you guys sure about that? And it's like the stupid DM question.
I've done those things.
Yep.
The answer is always yes.
Yes. Yep. There you
just double dog dared us.
Yep.
You just did.
And they were warned about the hornet and the green and the everything, and Buddy still went and did it. And I was like, okay, hands up. There you go.
Yeah. I've had my double where I'm like, are you guys sure that's really what you want to do? You sure?
It's almost instinctive to ask.
Like you don't even have to roll dice. You just like they're dead.
And you instinctively ask. You almost have to get the habit out of your head not to ask that question.
Yeah.
But at first you will instinctively ask that when you start DMing.
Yeah. That's one of the things I learned after the first total party kill. That was just stupid. Because it was just like it was just like that scene out of Christmas Story. Yep. Where he knows if he sticks the tongue on the thing.
Exactly. No, that's exactly what they were in.
That's exactly the response you're going to get when you go, are you sure?
That was a funny moment. But I used to do, like, again, this is a bit of my gonzo creativity thrown into my serious settings, right? I put this spike hornet in that could just, close to the end of its life, would give off so much magic into a creature and then die.
Right.
And the thing is, you got to, and it's rare. It would be rarely happen, and I would roll percentage rolls to see if it would actually happen in the area, so players might run into it. Very rarely did they do it, but the first time I ever put it into the game, the whole party, it killed the whole party.
Yeah. Right.
And I was like that, like I imagined it could happen. I didn't think it would happen the first time.
Think it would really happen.
No.
I don't think they'd be that dumb.
No, or they'd be higher level by the time they run into it, where they could survive the blast. But they decided to find it at level 1, so it's like, okay,
the first total party kill that I refereed, and it was exactly went down pretty darn similar, and it was one of those things too where they didn't they did everything on the count of 3 together.
Yep. Team. They were a team and dying together. Let's fail together, guys. Like there's a hole. Let's roll over.
To myself, you guys could. I mean, if they had surrendered, which was really their best option at that point, but no. Okay, so they died, and I didn't even roll the dice. I just stood up and said, "Okay, it's break time. I'm gonna go order some pizza and stuff." And so I'm in the kitchen. I ordered pizza. I'm making some popcorn. I'm getting more sodas out. Right.
Yep.
And it slowly dawns on everybody, and they're like sitting around, and they're going, "Wait, she didn't even roll any dice when we did that. We're dead, aren't we?"
When the game master doesn't need to roll dice to make the decision, that it's either you've outright won or you're done.
Yeah, right.
One of the two things are there's no.
They literally tried to jump the mouth of an active volcano.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Yeah. They just
gone. See you later. You don't survive lava. Like if your foot goes in, it's not like I pulled it out in time. You don't.
Game system.
No, it don't matter what game system. Any game system that says he could, I'd be like, I'm ignoring that rule.
Yeah.
You didn't. Okay, sorry. But DM, it says that I could survive. No.
So then they're like, I'm like, yeah, you died, and they're like, oh. And then I said, no, so start rolling new characters.
Like, you want to know what? Probably was one of the easiest character deaths ever because the whole team has to like make new characters. Yeah, like everyone's like,
that was a Star Frontiers game too. They just
beautiful way to go. What a beautiful way to end the whole thing.
They did not survive Volturnus, no.
And you know what? I think given an hour and a half, this is the perfect end to a great stream with you, RPG Grandma. And I want to do this again sometime in the future when you have time to do this with me. I really do. This was exciting. Okay. I hope you had a good time.
Oh, I had a good time. Hope you had a good time.
I did.
Had a good time. I
yeah.
hope they got some ideas to go steal. I didn't take things now very grim dark.
I really hope people got to know you. Like, I hope people, the future viewership we get on this video gets more people knowing who you are top to bottom when it comes to tabletop role-playing. I think I tried to explore your background right up until your mindset, your principles, where you're at on gaming.
I just want people to play games and have fun.
Oh, yeah. But it's good to know where people are coming from, right?
To live in misery and anger 24/7.
Oh,
I need a stress valve. And I don't think there's a right way to do this. I know there's people who get on and they say there's a right way, and I've explored.
There's a right way for you.
Yeah, but
there's a right way for you, and there's a right way for
every group, and just so we're clear, just because somebody's character dies and the party continues on and they're there, doesn't mean they can't continue to have an influence and help the game master. We had a party. We had a person die. So every now and then, during tense moments, he would just, as he was doing other stuff, he would just blurt out, "You're all going to die."
I don't think the game master is another player, but I do think the overall group is a team.
And that was great because it really helped the tension. So,
well, but I think that's the aspect of the team aspect. You're not just a team as characters, but you and the game master as players are a team. And you work together to make the atmosphere and experience for everyone, including the individual and everyone at the table, better. And that includes, even if you lose a character, you're still part of the team, man.
Right. Right.
Like
Now
we
he was
still
just
expect you
reminding
to
them constantly that they were in a lethal situation.
trolling. Well, sometimes that's a fun part of team play, right? A little bit
Yeah,
of
it was
trolling,
fun.
a little
You know,
poking, right?
yeah, yeah, and and we had a lot of fun in that game.
Yeah,
People accidentally shot each other. You know.
that's a beautiful. Seen that too many times. Okay, RPG Grandma, we'll end here. Take care, guys. For
Peace
now, we're
out,
done.
everybody.
Peace out.